Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Rachel.
How are you?
Mysterious.
Ooh.
Spooky. The circle has called me, Rachel. The long road is ahead, and it's always a long road.
That it is. It's been a long road to get here.
From here to there?
No. We only cover that on our Patreon. No.
It's always ruined, isn't it, that phrase? Thanks, Enterprise.
Yeah. But we are the YumYumPodcast, a married couple who is currently making their way through the Babylon 5 franchise. We've finished the series. We're doing the films that come after Sleeping in Light.
I prefer the term movies for these. To label them with films is very, very brave and bold of you.
They are not cinema. That is...
They are still TV.
Yes.
For now.
Very much so.
Soon there'll be video.
Yay for that. But if you're tuning in, you might not know the story of Yum Yum, and Ryan will provide that.
I give context because I am a king, and Star Trek Discovery is a television series that made us want to be podcasters, that made us feel the urge to break down television shows, because it made us have so many conversations about what does and doesn't work about it, and we just had to write these things down in whatever way we could, and we thought, let's get some microphones, let's record this stuff, and then we realized that there's only so much Star Trek Discovery. What else are we going to do? And so we went back to our...
The plan was for Desperate Housewives.
It's always for Desperate Housewives. We'll get to Desperate Housewives, Wisteria Lane one day. But we always kept referring back to Babylon 5, and Babylon 5 is what we're here to discuss. But Yum Yum itself...
I begged you to pick something for the main feed that I actually liked.
And that's why we did Discovery, because you loved the Yum Yum moment. The Yum Yum moment being a scene between a scene between now Oscar-winning actress Michelle Yeoh asking a character who barely has any presence or lines of dialogue, do you want to help me kill the main antagonist? And this character, Commander Nandi, without even thinking twice, she flicks her hair back, licks her lips, and breathily, sexily, and funnily says, yum yum.
Only part of that's true.
Yes, the funny part is very much true. I laugh still at it to this day. But yum yum was such a moment of absolute bizarre absurdity that we refuse to let it go. And we bring on people on our podcast who remind them to. It's not just you, the Yumlings, who are our listeners. It's not just Rachel wanting to be reminded, why did I agree to the name again? Or that's the reason, because it's really good, Ryan. But we have a guest. We have a fellow Babylon 5 podcasting person along for the ride with us as we discuss one of these damned Babylon 5 TV movies. We're joined by Baz. Hello, Baz.
Hello, good to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. We've been meaning to get some more British people onto the podcast. More of... there
aren't many of us, are there?
No, there's not too many British people, unfortunately. You spread your empire out a little thin. And
we did.
Don't worry, we have your Union Jack on our flag, sadly. But, Baz, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, your podcast, and your endeavors with Babylon 5.
Yeah, Babylon 5 is kind of a bit of my life at the moment. So, I co-host a Babylon 5 podcast. We're one of the few UK Babylon 5 podcasts. There's a lot in the US as well, but we're a podcast, Dream Given Form, which is a podcast that I co-host with Luke Winch, and we kind of explore Babylon 5. We've done a lot of kind of thematic discussions. We've done some interviews from the actors, and then we're starting to kind of explore. Over the last year, we've kind of gone into episode deep dives. So we've just covered season 1, and we're on a slight break now, looking to do some thematic discussions before we kick off season 2 in the spring. So we're taking our time. This is going to be like a 5 or 6 year endeavor for us. So Dream Given Form is my Babylon 5 podcast. I always do a lot of other podcasting as well. So I've got Make It So, which is a Star Trek Legacy podcast, which looks at kind of the Next Generation era, Next Generation DS9, Voyager, kind of Star Trek episodes and characters and themes there as well. And then I'm a big Doctor Who fan as well. My son, who is, he's about to turn 18, but we've been doing it for a couple of years now. So my son, Ben, is the biggest Doctor Who nerd, ever. He knows everything about it. So we do a podcast called The TARDIS Crew as well. And then other podcasts I get on as well. I'm a bit of a whore for podcasting. So when you said, "Kid, would you want to be a guest?" I'm like, "Yes, please." So I'll come on your podcast now to talk Babylon 5, which I love. So yeah, so that's kind of my podcasting. I'm also an author as well. Luckily, the last few years I've got published, so I've written some non-fiction books, and I'm gonna publicize every time I go on. I'm gonna publicize this now. I've just written a book on Babylon 5 called The Triumph of Babylon 5, which is exploring the 30-year history of the show. So it's all the behind the scenes, the development of the show. It attempts to keep going with things like Call to Arms, Crusade, and Rangers, and all the stuff that came after the series as well. With some kind of actor interviews and that as well. So yes, my kind of current endeavors with Babylon 5.
So you really have the series in your blood. You've had to write a book about it. So you've had to look through all of the nitty gritty details, talk to people. And I have to know this. Is the mentions of Nograth very great in the book or awesomely great in the book?
Well, We recently did a round table on season 1 for the podcast, and the graph did come out, and you got to mention Ryan. So Yum Yum got to mention on our podcast as well.
In terms of the book, big part of the production of season 1 that they had a big goofy bug and they had to let it go.
I need to check that. I'll be horrified if the graph does not get a mention. I'm pretty sure he will, but
does Lou? Does Lou Welch?
Does Lou? Oh, Lou Welch. He gets a mention in our episode discussions on the podcast. Again, does Lou get on? He is a hero.
Me and the rest of the guys, we were wondering, when are you going to come back on duty? Look, we bought a cake, all right? Been sitting there for 2 days now.
Are you kidding me? You pass up a cake for 2 days? What's the deal? What have you done with the real Lou Welch, huh? Hey, security over here. We got another guy with a changeling net.
I think it's time to know what we are watching and talking about. So we've already said the name, A Call to Arms, but what does that even mean? Who's calling arms? Whose arms are being called? What is this all about? So what does the description you have in front of you say?
Earth and Mbryo joined forces to build 2 battleships under the leadership of the Interstellar Alliance President John Sheridan, Boxleitner. While checking on the construction of these ships with Garibaldi, Jerry Doyle, Sheridan is sent a message in his dreams prompting him to search the galaxy for 3 beings. Sheridan unites his team, and together they steal the battleships and rush to lead Earth's defense against the surprise Drakh attack.
Wow. That is a very potent and very wordy.
That's a summary.
It's a wordy summary. It doesn't roll off the tongue easily. It annoys me greatly that they have it down as Boxleitner, but then they give Jerry Doyle the full name. Like, you need to know Jerry's full name, but Bruce, it's just Boxleitner. You don't need more than that. They can't just put down
Bruce.
Doyle.
You know who he is.
You know who Bruce is. He was Tron. He's Tron, for Christ's sake. He was the guy who fought for the users. But YYE is the most important thing to us. Now, Baz, I don't know if you're familiar with YYE. It's a little thing that we discovered on our podcast. It's a special formula for success in a series, which is Yum Yum Energy, in which we ponder for a moment, who could have said Yum Yum in a given piece of media? In this case, obviously Babylon 5. And are you that familiar with the Yum Yum moment yourself, Baz? Have you watched much Star Trek Discovery? Do you know all of the hijinks we are talking about and that we're named after?
I do know Discovery. I've watched all of Discovery. I did actually wonder... There was some good bits in Discovery. I do like elements of Discovery. So, I mean, I like all Star Trek. I'm a massive Star Trek fan. You don't need to be exclusively Babylon 5 or Star Trek. I love both. But I wasn't familiar where your name came from. I've listened to a few of your episodes before, but I wasn't aware of where it came from. So Yum Yum Energy is kind of one that's less familiar with me. It's I've done film studies like A-levels and stuff before. I've done kind of some stuff around qualifications around it, but I've never come across Yum Yum Energy, and I think it needs to be part of the syllabus.
I think so too. Rachel, you are the professor in it. Rachel actually has a PhD in Yum Yum Energy. Here in Australia, we don't have A levels, we have Y levels, as in Yum levels.
Fuck up.
We call them YYLs.
Who's your Yum Yum Energy pick for a call to arms, Ryan?
Is it wrong to just say Galen? Is it wrong to just say Galen? Because
he's the easy pick.
He's the easy pick, but I have another pick that's the correct pick. The only real pick.
Uh-huh.
My big dick energy is on the table next to my YYE, which is the Russian captain or general guy that was defending Earth. The one that did not want to be there. The guy whose accent gave up also. The guy who couldn't even say consortium in the Russian accent. He called it he said, yes, you have very much upset the Russian consortium. And I'm like, you gave up. He gave up. I'm giving it not to that character alone, but to the actor, the brave actor who went 110% on the accent only to then pivot to 0% on the accent. I loved him. Everything he did. When he was told by Sheridan what to do, he had this twinkle in his eye of wanting to say yum yum, but Michael Vejar and JMS were behind their camera with their arms crossed saying, don't you do it. Don't you do it. What about yourself, Rachel, as the professor, someone with YYL?
I think as the professor, I deserve last judgment, so I think it should go to Baz.
Baz.
Okay.
The author in the room.
Yeah, okay then. So I think there were two. They're linked actually. So obviously Darina, I think she has a huge Yum Yum energy. I could see her saying yum yum very sarcastically, but I think actually the one that kind of springs to mind with that kind of big dick energy is that leader of the thieves assassin, the one with the guy with the sunglasses.
Yes.
In Down Below. He has big yum yum energy.
Do you think he would have returned in the Babylon 5 universe if Crusade and whatnot kept going? Do you think we would have kept coming back to the Thieves Guild with the sunglasses man in charge? He just had such YYE.
We'll get into my thoughts on him later.
Okay, well, Rachel, what's your opinion on the YYE candidate?
My official contender is the shadowy figure that I legit thought was Lorianne at first that calls you got to go to the circle.
Oh, the other techno mage that was like, you come with me, you belong in the circle of life. I like that none of us landed on the same person. It's very refreshing. This is a divisive film when it comes to YYE. I guess it's up to our yumlings out there to let us know who had it the most, who was just oozing it from their pores.
Galen's just the easy pick, though.
That bald head. He is a descendant of a Woodward, so we can't put it past them to have the YYE. So let's talk about our relationships and histories with a call to arms. I'll go first. It's not too complicated. I have watched Babylon 5 before, and when I had the DVDs, I was aware of the movies, but the movies' DVDs were very difficult to find. They were like the holy grail to actually find individual, let alone the pack of them. But at some point in time, I eventually got a copy of them. And as stated on this very podcast, I had seen the movies and they were all fine to me. Varying levels of adequate to mildly interesting. And A Call to Arms was one of the ones that always slips through the cracks in my brain because it just... there's this level of not caring because it's after the show. It's like it's after the 5th season and I just go, oh, okay. Like it's a lead into Crusade, which I've also owned on DVD and have watched several times, but I never think of it as like the lead into Crusade. I never really watched them together. It's just like, oh, I watched A Call to Arms and it's perfectly fine. And I don't even think of it even now as a great lead into Crusade, especially with what Crusade is, but I think of this as just a perfectly fine little film. It's not the worst of the TV movies we've seen, but I always say this, I don't know if it's the best one either. I don't know what the best one is. Perhaps when we're fully done with with the show, Rachel, we should actually say which one was the best TV movie. But Rachel, do you have a history with A Call to Arms? Have you seen this marvelous piece of entertainment?
No, I have not seen this before. And I was always a bit meh about it. We never got to it when we made an effort to try and watch the movies. The goodwill ran out quickly. And I was always just oh, okay. You told me that it was connected to Crusade, which I've never watched, and that it had cast members that transfer over. And I was that means nothing to me, okay.
But it's Galen.
Yeah, I knew that he was one of the most popular characters of Crusade. So many people are excited that there's more of him in the franchise. And I was honestly just had no opinion going in. I was at best it's gonna be fine. And I wasn't disappointed.
Did you enjoy this? Did you hate this? What was your opinion on it?
I think it's perfectly fine for the most part.
Now, Baz, tell us a bit about your journey with A Call to Arms, and do you have any further history in terms of knowledge of how this came to be? Because as we said, this is all a lead-in for Crusade. So tell us a bit about your history with this, and if you have any further things to say about its existence as a whole.
Sure, I've probably got quite a bit to say, actually. I've read a book about it. But my Babylon 5 history goes back to watching it live from about season 3. So I used to get the VHS tapes. That's how old I am and how far back my Babylon 5 fandom goes. So when this came out, I remember the VHS tape coming out at the end of the 90s, maybe 2000. And it was just before I went to university. And I remember this one coming out. I remember all the TV movies coming out. And like you, I was thinking a bit of a law of diminishing returns. It's probably in the beginning, it's probably the best one, because half of that stuff is actually from the show itself. And they kind of add some context to that. A Call to Arms has some really good moments and some very middling moments to it, which is probably representative of a lot of the TV movies that kind of followed anyway. The continued attempts to make the show. So as a film in itself, as a continuation of the Babylon 5 universe, it's really frustrating because the one thing that JMS did really, really well with Babylon 5 was bring everything to a head and wrap all the main storylines, because you probably covered this in the podcast before, the network it was on collapsed during season 4, so we had to wrap everything up early, and then TNT picked up Babylon 5 for season 5 and beyond. So really, he worked so hard to bring it to an end, the Shadow stuff, the Earth Civil War, the Mbryo conflict, all that kind of stuff, and then do season 5. And then you get the TV movies, and they start off fine. You kind of wonder, Third Space, for example. I do really like Third Space. I kind of wonder why it exists, but I also really quite like that one as well. A Call to Arms is really frustrating because it's all about setup, and it might have been a lot better had we had another 5-season show in Crusade. But that was never going to happen. TNT kind of went from we're going to bring this, and it actually was doing really, really well on the ratings for TNT. It was making the money. They really liked it. But in the beginning and A Call to Arms, they started to realise they didn't want to do Babylon 5, even though they commissioned JMS to do an entire 5-season show, which was Crusade to follow. So the frustrating thing about Crusade is that JMS works so hard to wrap everything up, and then he opens up this can of worms and nothing gets resolved. And it keeps happening. When you get to Legend of the Rangers, you'll see stuff that goes, oh, this could be interesting, never gets resolved. And that kind of keeps happening as well. So, I mean, A Call to Arms might have been more successful if you'd had like Gary Cole's Captain Gideon in it. The fact that none of the actual crew of the Excalibur, I know Galen and Dorino are in it, and they're great. I like those characters.
And Sarah Chambers is here too.
She is. She's not the Doctor. She's a different character, isn't she? So
I think I can't remember if they're connected.
I did check. She's a different character because she's the Doctor in a Crusade. So the fact that none of the crew of Excalibur are in this feels a little bit odd, knowing that they were going to go into a series, and then of course it ends really, really well and really dramatically. And you go, oh, this is what the hell's going to happen next? But you know that it's going to be fine because you see one of her on Earth in Sleeping in Light. Yeah. And then none of this gets resolved because TNT basically ruined Crusade. I don't know if you know anything about.
Oh, of course, it's a whole entire saga in itself. Yeah. And the TV movies are interesting because they were part of the bundle of season 5 of like, hey, we'll renew you, we'll pick you up, but also let's do some TV movies. But by their very nature, the TV movies have to exist as nothings. They cannot contribute to the overall plot because, one, who knows where they're going to be like physically placed when they're released? Like, hey, here's some movies, here's this, but also you have to keep the show as the show itself, and the movies have to have this awkward middle ground of mattering and not mattering at all. And most of the times they don't matter at all. Like, oh, soul hunters come to the station. What does that matter in the end? Oh, we open up a dimension to third space. Oh, what does that matter in the end? And it just keeps going like that. And that is what is so perplexing to me about A Call to Arms. I feel like this is both a classic Babylon 5 TV movie in which we see our characters, but only a skeleton crew of the characters from B5, a very minimal amount of them, go on a half-baked little adventure mixed with a TV movie pilot for a show that's about to come on. And in both cases are usually boring, middling, bad, terrible, misconceived TV movie pilots, especially of the science fiction variety, usually are pretty clunky. They have a hard time finding their groove. Look at The Gathering, for instance, both cuts of it. It's not the most thrilling piece of television. But there's, at least you can say, oh, it sells you on what the show is. But A Call to Arms, this is a lead-in to Crusade. And yet it's also just another Babylon 5 TV movie. It's a movie with two identities wrestling each other.
Who are you?
A friend. My name is Galen. I called to you earlier. The message from Delen. That was me. I apologize for the deception.
As the person in the room who has not experienced Crusade and maybe doesn't know all of this stuff, what did you think about this? Especially, as you said, you didn't have really any expectations going in, but at the end of this, it is saying to you this was all built up towards a spin-off series. So how did you feel about that?
I feel like I'm going to forget that I've watched it. Like, I already feel things slipping from my mind. It just feels very forgettable because, as you pointed out, by its nature, it can't do anything major. Like, it's stuck in the middle, and it's just kind of left being a bit nothing. And I liked a lot of aspects of it, but because of the constraints on it outside of the production, it never gets off the ground for me.
There's a fascinating issue at the center of this as well, which is they do not shake up stuff until the final 5 minutes. And when it happens, you say, why wasn't that the movie? Why wasn't that the movie? Because I don't know if you would agree with this, Rachel, but I, as a viewer, picked up so quickly what the big bad plan was that the Shadow's allies are using one of their super weapons and they're going to attack Earth. And not only is it because I'm aware of what the Drock have done previously, but the characters that are engaging in this are also aware of what the Drock have done previously to an extent.
And it's not even, we've got to convince them. Like, they have lines that brush that possibility away. And then it's just like Garibaldi gets his own sources and confirms. And then it's like, okay, and now everybody's on the same side again.
And as esoteric as Galen is, I didn't think that he was that vague with what he was pointing Sheridan towards, and so a bit...
No, when they flash back to the things that he said, it annoyed me. Because I'm just like, I do not need to hear this 3 fucking times. I get it. Sheridan just needs to do a look and then say something. I don't need to see the footage again.
But Baz, what do you think about that? Did you have a similar issue at all, or do you feel a bit differently that the ride itself was good enough, like the journey and all of that, or did you have a similar gripe to me in this moment?
I'm kind of with you there. It feels a little bit like half energy until the final battle. And then you go, wow. And I remember watching it for the first time, going back to my history with A Call to Arms, watching it going, holy crap, when they unleash the plague. And you kind of, because that's the best moment, because actually the big shadow death clouds is a brilliant concept. And I love the idea of the Drakh himself. I mean, I think the Drakh are great. I think actually the stuff they do in Babylon 5 with the Centauri out in season 5 and then with this, they're quite effective as new bad guys coming out after the shadows, but you know that Earth's never going to get destroyed by the Shadow Killer. You kind of know what it is way before the rest of the cast. So yeah, it's quite frustrating waiting for them to get there and play that whole thing of, is Sheridan a little bit insane? He came out from the dead. You know this Garibaldi. Just get on with the plot. But then when you get to the end and that kind of twist of they stop that, but then they unleash the plague anyway. That is probably the coolest moment of A Call to Arms, but it's about 3 minutes before the end of the episode. So you're right. It's at least with The Gathering is quite slow. In fact, it's very, very slow as a part of episodes. We go to midnight on the firing line. The energy is through the roof compared to that in the beginning of season 1. But at least there's a plot. The Vorlons are coming to the station for the first time. Kosh gets, in invert commas, assassination attempt at least, really, and Sinclair's blamed. So there's a clear plot through line throughout. This one is like them reacting to what's going to happen for. I mean, how long? It's from an hour and a half, and it's about an hour and 10 minutes. Them kind of waiting for them to catch up with the audience is what's happening. It's really frustrating.
And it's interesting because with The Gathering, for all of its faults, it is a good representation of what Babylon 5's narratives could be about. This is a space station that is the UN, but not everyone is aligned for the mission of peace. There are going to be people who are going to undermine it, sabotage. There are going to be those who are grabbing for power with people like Jakar, who's backstabbing over here, and the Minbari who have this forward face of purity and niceness, but there's this underneath it, and so on and so on and so on. But what does A Call to Arms do? Does it sell Crusade well, or is it just more adventures of our old friends? And it lives too much with both. It's too much with both. And even with our old friends, Rachel, I wrote in our notes here, Garibaldi, Lockley, and Zach are here too. That's it. Like, they are here. Garibaldi gets the most to do, but even then, a lot of his scenes, poor Jerry Doyle, a lot of Jerry Doyle's scenes are him sitting in the White Star chair, just grabbing the arm of it and banging his hand as he acts like, oh no, this could be the end of days. But that's it. Like, we keep cutting to him just stressing out, but it's not like meaty material for the character.
And it's just like Garibaldi fretting isn't new.
With the B5 movies, they always have that need to bring in the cast members. And what did you think of having them here, having the people here? I mean, is this I think this is the last time we'll ever see Zach Allen.
Yeah. It was cool seeing them. It was nice seeing them just continuing their lives. That's part of why, like, Sleeping in Light is such a great finale, is because you can imagine what they've done in that time jump and what they've do after that as well. And this movie does sit within the time jump. So it's just like, and Zach's on Babylon 5 still, and it, I am a bit confused that Lockley is still there.
No, they explained that. The whole entire thing was they had to have an Earth personnel person in charge of Babylon 5, but Earth was renting it from the Alliance for a period of time, only for it to eventually in time be handed back. We see that in Sleeping in Light. Like, Sleeping in Light's like, Earth's had this for a bit of time.
Yeah.
But what's something interesting?
But it was, I thought they said in season 5 it was like a year that she was meant to be there for.
No. She was meant to be there for a while. Hence, at the end of the season, they get the big salute scene because you're going to be the next generation. Yeah. And you know what's something I want to praise about A Call to Arms? It's set a couple of years after that, right? After season 5, 4 years or so
it's
after
about 4
that.
years. It's 5-year anniversary.
Yeah,
so
5-year anniversary. So 4 or 5 years. And they very quickly established through visuals as well as what we see with the Thieves Guild and whatnot, how Babylon 5 has changed under Lockley's rule. It has changed. Things have evolved differently. And even with people like Zach Allen, it feels like it's a lot more relaxed, which is the point. That was the point in River of Souls is under Lockley's command, Babylon 5 is a smooth-running station. Yes, they'll have their quirky little problems, but all of the major galaxy-changing, bizarre adventures won't happen here anymore. And I really like that as a piece of flavor to this. Like, every time we cut to Lockley, she's so, high-end stressed because of Sheridan's bullshit, but everything else, she seems relaxed. She seems in her element. Her office is so cozy now. Well, when we first met her during Sheridan's time, she didn't have any moment to unpack her shit because Garibaldi was rifling through it just like a sneaky little guy.
In this story, it did strike me that actually, if you took out Babylon 5 from A Call to Arms, it would still work perfectly. You don't need Babylon 5, but of course it's still the Babylon 5 universe, and we're not quite going to spin-off territory yet. So, Zach, I think is great. It gets only a couple of scenes. I think that scene is very, very fun with Dorina and all the weapons. I think it says a lot about her as well in a very kind of quick way. But I do love Zach's reactions, and he's pretty much it is his last appearance. It's also Jerry Dawes' last appearance as well, because I know he was going to do one of the Lost Tales, and he got pushed back and cancelled. And I was sad that the actor then passed as well, as did the actor playing Zach Allen. So it is the last appearance for Garibaldi, the last appearance with Zach. And I think they're both great in this, even though they don't actually do a lot. One thing I really like with Garibaldi is him and Sheridan together, that banter, and particularly in the early scenes as well. And how actually then Garibaldi then does go, yeah, this is Sheridan, come on, we actually got to do something here. So it doesn't take much convincing, because I think between they're really good. There is that distance. There always was that distance after season 4 because of what happens. They were never close after that. But I think there's a kind of, they're friends, not great friends, but they're friends working together. And I think they work really well. I think the Boxleitner and Doyle play each other really well. And yes, Scoggins, I think she's really good as Lockley in this. All she does really is sit on B5 and send a message, if you think about it. But she's good. She's really good in the scene she's in.
She gets to be the funny one because every time she hears about what Sheridan is saying or doing, she has this look on her face of, no, not on my station. No, I don't want this again. Oh, exactly. Here he goes. Here goes my ex-husband at it again with his crazy nonsense.
Yeah, very much so.
Activate Gold Channel 1. Put me through to Earth Dome. President Susanna Luchenko's office.
Captain, it's 3 a.m. back there.
Thank you, I know. Always knew I'd get court-martialed for something someday. May as well be now, get it over with.
There's a big change up in terms of, I guess, audio in this movie from B5, which is the music. Christopher Frankie, I never knew how to pronounce it. He's gone. He said, we're moving on.
I missed
We want
missed him.
we want Crusade to have a distinct character to it. We want to have it very much be its own thing, have a flavor of its own, which you do see not just in the music, but the aesthetics of the visuals and the tone as well, and the genre being far more fantasy sci-fi in Occult Arms than in Babylon 5, which is very much what Crusade would do. But yes, we have new music done by Evan Chen, who is quite an infamous figure in the Babylon 5 world because his music, as you hear here, is very strange, is the way to describe it. It's very strange.
Clunky.
I disliked it from like the first note, pretty much. Like before we get through the first scene, I was just like, why does this music suck?
Not a fan, huh?
Why does it suck? And then like I got more accepting of it as it went on, except for the human music. The human music should go in the bin. I fucking hated it.
The comedy music.
The stings can just, I want to kick them out.
Do you remember what happened in season 1 with the comedy music? Are you remembering this?
Yeah.
Do you remember what happened to the comedy music in season 1 of B5 Baz? Do you know this?
I remember it, yeah, and they did away with it because
Jameis took Christopher Frank aside and said, no more comedy music. And I think on Lurker's Guide, he's like, we had a little conversation. There will be no more comedy music. And there never was. Why didn't he have that?
Better for it.
He needed to have that conversation with Evan. Hey, Ev. We need to have a little word about the comedy music.
Do they use the comedy music in Crusade?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It's littered, Rachel. Here's what I'll say. Now, I was shocked at how much I actually liked the music in Occult Arms because
there were a number of themes that I genuinely enjoyed as well.
If I have to give a big praise, I thought the use of the slow, methodical, rhythmic drumming throughout the middle section of the movie as Sheridan and the gang were discovering little details about the case that they're on really did bring this sense of impending cosmic dread. And I really liked the more quiet atmospheric stuff. And actually, when the music would just fully swing and lean into this almost Renaissance fair Arthurian legend type music, to me, it's always bad in a Crusade especially, but in this, when it's like, I'm a sci-fi show, so I just have synthetic bleeps and bloops and blops all over the place.
Yeah, it almost feels like it does, like there's a sweet spot in the musical choices of, like, if it has too few instruments, it sucks. And when it has too many, it sucks. But they do hit that sweet spot.
With the original run of B5 with Christopher's music, there was always a sense of I'm putting music that's appropriate. I'm not thinking of it as a sci-fi thing. But if there
what fit the scene.
But he wasn't afraid to also say, hey, look, could this scary moment have a bit of a theremin in there? Yeah, sure it can. And he would put it in there. But to me, the comedy music and this like, I'm a sci-fi thing, so I'm just kooky and strange was the real downside. But I was shocked at how much I actually did enjoy the music unironically to this, because in my eyes, Crusade's music is so aggressive in its approach to things. That's a polite way of saying bad. It's aggressive in its approach to things. But Baz, what are your thoughts on this? Because one of the major characters of the series is the music. It's something that many people may take for granted, but it is something that was there. And we have now gone from a composer who was an established, well-known musician, someone who is of acclaim, of cachet, to a first-timer, really. Evan Chen this is his first and only experiences doing such a thing.
Yeah, I'm really not a fan. I mean, I'm thinking about the Crusade title sequence music, and I think about the glorious Babylon 5 title sequence music for every season. I love them all. I really love them. And I think about Crusade's title sequence and I shudder. And I think there is so much clinky, clunky kind of sci-fi stuff in there as well. I hate the comedy music. I'm really, really not a fan. There were only the two things that I would agree. Well, one thing I'll agree with you, Ryan, is that the kind of that middle section with the kind of the thudding noise is quite atmospheric and forbidding, and it's the moment again, which is the best part that I've already mentioned. The best part of the movie when the dark virus is unleashed, the shadow virus is unleashed over Earth, and you get that kind of dun 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 kind of. It's almost it's less than music and more thudding notes.
It's reminiscent of what Battlestar Galactica would kind of get on to do.
Absolutely. And it works beautifully. And that sense of dread, there were moments when he captures the sense of dread perfectly. But I think that's about 10%. I absolutely hate the music on this. And I think for the Crusade as well. There's a lot I like about Crusade, or what it was trying to do. And then we think about and obviously I've read a lot about and written about what were they going to do afterwards with Crusade, and it sounds amazing. So it's a real shame, for many reasons, that the show got cancelled. But yeah, the music is not something I enjoy at all, and I just think, while I completely understand going for a new aesthetic for a new show and being quite different, I mean, say aesthetically, I think this is great. I adore in the Call to Arms the jump gates. The way they look fantastic.
I like when they go really into them and we get like a view from the side of a ship going in. That was cool. That was different. We hadn't seen that before.
Yeah. So some really cool things like that. I just felt a little bit different. That worked really, really well. Some of the stuff, I'm not a huge fan of the kind of submarine feel of the Excalibur, but I mean, I can see they were doing something quite different there as well. So some of the stuff I really appreciate what they were doing, but the execution with the music particularly is dreadful for me. I'm not a fan at all. I'm sorry.
A certain faction has been returned to Babylon 5, a group that was in one episode, and we have talked about it on this podcast. People either love or hate techno mages. I think most B5 fans have landed on loving them, but I have also understood at times the reason for not being into them, because there is such a inherent goofiness that comes with them. But Rachel, you knew that techno mages would be a bigger part of Babylon 5 in the spin-off stuff, but from your end, you only have ever had Geometry of Shadows be their point of reference. So what did you think about Galen, of course, but how they were brought back and how the use of a technomage or technomages really did hang over the entire thing?
Yeah, it's Galen's decision that sets everything in motion. And I was just like, okay, that's the spring that sends the pinball off this time. I was just like, okay, it has to be something. I guess it's technomages.
And what did you think about technomages being back? Like, that's your thought on using
functional.
them? But
I thought of it as functional. Like, they needed something to give them information, but not too much information. Technomages are cool. Let's do that.
Did it deepen them or lessen them to bring them back?
No, it didn't really impact my opinion, other than me being like, so not all of them are bald, but the ones that we've gotten to know are both bald.
Yeah.
So is it just that enlightened technomages decide to shave their heads?
Well, Rachel, Galen is shown not to be an enlightened one. They all think of him as a bit of a dipshit.
Yeah, but we see him as being the useful one.
Of course we do, but in
he's
order...
the one that tries to save humanity and Earth. And it's just like, okay. I was just very accepting. I was a little disappointed that he didn't really get anything to do.
Yeah.
And
he comes in at the end. He's like, I'm now on Babylon 5.
I wanted to feel the presence and the threat of the circle, because they keep on fucking talking about them and being like, you have to go to the circle is summoning you.
And it's just a bunch of losers around.
You're in trouble, boy. You're in trouble.
And it's just a bunch
and we're
of...
just like, well, what does that mean?
It's just
what does that mean?
Rachel, it's just a bunch of old losers around a fire.
They can kill the technomages, right? But what, is that,
Bad?
they're afraid for their lives, or are they afraid because they're in hiding, or are they afraid because the Drakh might get their technology? None of those. Don't know. They don't care to explain. I get they don't want to die, and that's about it.
I'm mixed on it overall. I like Galen as a character. I think he's probably the bright spot of Crusade for many people, including myself. I think actually my favorite character in Crusade is Daniel Day Kim's Matheson, which they even tease a little in this of at the beginning. The telepath conflict cost many lives, and it indicates that we've sorted out the telepath stuff off screen, which is what Crusade follows on with as well. Of it would fill us in little tidbit ways of what happened. But Galen was great. I loved the use of having cinematic tricks with techno mages this time. It's not just they have holograms and he speaks cool and he just transports from place to place, but they went out of their way to make his powers have a far more, again, grander scope to them. Him transporting people on these places, the use of his ball looking in on the events, and the cinematography, and just the use of filmmaking to really exemplify what you can do with a techno mage. It's not just telling us, this is in fact showing us more than it's telling us, which is my greatest compliment for the use of the techno mage. Like when Sheridan's like, yeah, I know what you are, you're a techno mage, you do this. But for the most part, they are just leaving Galen and his group of weird techno mages to do the stuff to let us understand what it is. Hence your frustration of when they cut back in flashbacks to Galen doing all of that to let us know what was going on. We didn't need it because mentally we already picked it up. The sponge of our brain soaked in his strangeness and what it was getting at. But I'm also a little conflicted because I think A Call to Arms is a little bit squidgy on the details of what the show gave us on many things. Like, this plays it a little bit fast and loose when it comes to, didn't all of you techno mages go beyond the rim? No, actually. We're just hiding. And we'll hide there for 20 to 30 years. When you watch Geometry of Shadows, it's very clear. Without a doubt, they're all leaving because they are afraid, but also they are beyond this. They have understood something. And now it's like, oh, actually, we've just been hiding. Which is it? Which is it? Because now when I look back at Geometry of Shadows, I'm like, well, it seems like Elric's either a liar or just not very well informed, or did they just come back from beyond?
He's just done with their shit.
Who knows? But it's a bit squidgy on some of those details with them. And also some of the effects are very bad. And not just effects, special effects, like CG-wise, but man, Babylon 5 always had a shoestring budget, and Crusade had even less, from what I understand, and they were fucked when they thought they could do a Star Trek-like show where they travel to planets, because even Star Trek, with a good amount of budget, could not make going down to alien planets look great, and Babylon 5/Crusade makes it look even worse. Like, every time we're down there, I'm like, wow, they made those rocks out of paper mache, truly, this time. I always have a problem with rocks in TV shows, like cliffs and rocks and stuff that are made by the people, not real ones, because you can literally always tell. And no joke, Baz, Rachel and I have been watching new shows and old shows, and I say with even new shows that come out this year, man, isn't it strange that we have never figured out a way to make rocks look realistic since the birth of film and television? Like, they still look as bad as always.
Hell, I don't even know if any of this is real.
But you're curious enough to find out, which is why I chose you. Your spirit is such that you will go, even if it means going alone.
Now, Baz and I have lived on Excalibur, but Rachel, this is the whole entire point of Excalibur's is its introduction to tell you that it's this powerful thing unlike anything else, and look how cool this set is. So what did you think of the Excalibur? Would you have wanted to spend more time here?
No. No, I wouldn't. It looks boring. It looks flat. It looks like a set. I like the idea of the submarine thing. But I don't see that mattering at all. Really?
Maybe we're spoiled because we did Space Above and Beyond on our podcast, which also goes for the interior having a very submarine/aircraft carrier approach. But here's the difference. Even though the set on Space Above and Beyond, well, they put the money in the sets in Space Above and Beyond, but here's the thing that I really wish that they would have gone with too, which is the lighting. They needed to shake up the lighting a bit, I think, because the lighting is still saying, we're Babylon 5.
It doesn't accentuate the assets of this set. And it's striking because it makes it feel even cheaper. Because, like, Babylon 5 set was fucking dirt cheap. Like, they cut corners any which way they could. This is a different sector. It has different lights. It says brown.
Yeah,
it's not the same set. It's totally not the same set. It's totally, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But, like, they had those little details that really can elevate it. And I'm thinking about things as simple as strip lights.
Even the pilot with The Gathering, as insane as the lighting was, you got a greater sense of location from the place.
Created atmosphere. A Call to Arms fails to create an atmosphere on that ship.
It's very flat. It's all really flat. And it's a shame because it's, I mean, from the exterior, you can kind of see the kind of the silhouette of it is kind of a bit more interesting. I do like the big gun. Obviously, I love the fact that he just shuts him down for a minute as well. But the inside is, I get the submarine feel. I get it slightly different, but Babylon 5 worked really hard to avoid going down Star Trek territory. And yet, kind of, the bridge looks like a Star Trek ship, and it all just kind of feels a little bit like the White Stars are fantastic. The White Star ship. Maybe I would like it was a souped-up White Star, maybe something a bit different, because it just feels very dull. Even the Earth ships, like the Agamemnon and stuff, they're kind of with the spinning, rotating sections and that, and the kind of the big bridges with kind of that feel more
specific to them. They do. Whereas they're like, this part's like human stuff, and it's more about the back end stuff. And it's like, well, I don't get to see that on a regular basis because you don't have engineer people. Like, I'm not going to go down to engineering and see like the back end with the like great Vorlon technology and the Mbryo fuel cells or whatever fuck's down there.
That was the big disappointment.
I get to be on the bridge. So there should be something different about the fucking bridge.
You hit it on the head there, because my big complaint is we get told that it's reversed engineered from both Mbryo and Vorlon technology, but I have no evidence of that from anything in the entire thing other than they tell you that. But instead, like, look at what the ship looks like.
I wanted that to be mirrored with the Drak as well. Like, they have the World Killer. I wanted that to be like a lesser version that they've like copied and pasted. So it's just like, we're doing this with Vorlon stuff and they're doing that with Shadow stuff.
Well, they did that with the Plague, right? Where they didn't invent the Plague. They took it from the Shadows and they used it, but they didn't have all the means to. And that's what they're doing with the Excalibur, where we don't have all the means of the Vorlon stuff, but we're using it anyway to the best of our abilities to get the job done. And that is the parallel. And I thought that was great. I love that.
Yeah.
But I really do
wanted it to be there a little bit more.
I just wish
because I wanted it to feel like it was still an extension, because like a part of Babylon 5's themes is that history inevitably repeats itself. And I would have liked it to be a little bit more striking that the cycle is continuing. And now, instead of being near the bottom of the food chain, humanity and the Drak have ascended up the ranks, and now they're going to be responsible for creating the next range of super weapons and be the next destructive forces in the universe.
They try with...
Because we see parts of that at the end of season 4.
They try with two things to make the Excalibur have this sense of otherness to just Earth ships, which is the big gun, of course, the big laser guns, but also the shielding, where they get shot at, it absorbs the energy. Now, that is different to what we've seen in Babylon 5, because most of the time there is no only the third space aliens had shields, like force fields and stuff. While
they
this
just counted damage. It was like just dodging it was all they had.
Look, I'm a sucker. I want this alien, like this so-called mixing of alien races and humanity's ship to actually feel that way in any way, shape, or form. And to Baz's point, this just feels way too familiar. Like, just seeing Sheridan sit in the captain's chair ordering people about made me have flashbacks to every science fiction show I've ever seen.
Sitting on every single captain chair.
Oh yeah, he must. He's Sheridan.
He's the fucking president. He gives no shit. No acknowledgement. He's just like, I'm in charge and I sit in the damn chair.
What's wonderful
I like that though.
What's wonderful about stuff like Space Above and Beyond, where they have their people leading the ship, is they don't give a fuck. Like, that show doesn't give a fuck about the bridge. It's there for when it needs to be, and even then it's completely different to what a Star Trek ship or this case the Excalibur is. Or
it reminds me more of Battlestar.
Or when you get to Farscape, they have their weird, fucked up Muppet take on it, where everything's so gross looking, and it's like this big environment where everyone's having to run around and stand and everything. But here it's just, hey, it's the Excalibur. It's a science fiction spaceship. You've seen one of these before, and that's my big problem. Is like, it's a ship.
Yeah,
you've seen it. It has a cool outside look. I like the look of the ship as the exterior of it, like the shape of it. I like the kind of long neck of it and everything like that. I like how it moves in space. I think it's really cool with that. And it is fun to see the two of them, the two ships next to each other, because obviously the whole thing is it's only Excalibur that makes it, and that's the only one of its type like that in the universe of B5. But the Druk are now the big bads in the universe of this franchise, because
and they're coming out in the open now.
Because who else do you have? Unless you introduce a new group or you bring back the third space aliens, who do you have left? Because Babylon 5 wrapped it up, and it's not interested in doing the telepath war. It's not interested in doing that on the screen. Baz, do you know any reason as to why that is the case?
Oh, I don't know. Well, there were two. He planned several movies because JMS owns the rights to the movies of any Babylon 5 movie. Two of those movies that he created in the 90s were telepath war movies. He was also looking into the telepath war in Lost Tales story as well.
What?
But he didn't do it.
Why does it always keep getting pushed back for shit like this? I always get confused.
This is what I say. Why wasn't as much the element I like of it? Why wasn't River of Souls the telepath movie instead? If you'd done, because you progressed it, you know, there were some outside of all the Crusade stuff now with plague and everything else going on. The other big mystery is the telepath war. It's so frustrating that it crosses over. Even in the books, I'm actually reading the Psychor trilogy books at the moment. The first one's about the rise of the Psychor. Second one's about Bester before he comes to B5. The third one is set after the telepath war with him and Garibaldi. There's this gap that he's never shown, and I'm always baffled.
He's
Do you think he's still just saving it for later?
No, here's my theory.
Well, I don't think it'll happen now, and I think he's even said he's no interest in doing it in an animated movie, because that's another option to do it, because you could get Walter Caden back, Pat Torn back, and the others as well. But no, they never had. I always find it baffling why he didn't do. I mean, both Third Space is better. Third Space and River of Souls are both completely throwaway. At least in the beginning has some kind of resonance to the story.
But it's a story we already know as well. Like, that's a thing.
We do.
It fills in
but
gaps,
I also see why they
but
did
it doesn't. It can't add anything new, and that's the part of the problem with all of the movies is that they can't add much to it. So it just kind of ends up sort of feeling like you've had a story to tell in this world, and now you've got this opportunity, and now you're trying to backfill it.
You don't do it, yes. Exactly. Why wasn't Third Space or River of Souls replaced by a telepath war movie? Everyone would have loved that. You get Bester, but Bester's amazing. Everyone adores Bester. You get Pat Tormund finally going full war on nuclear weapon as a telepath as well. Apparently Lennier was going to be involved in it.
And seeing like how much did Jakar actually change her, if at all?
Here's my theory.
That's the other one.
Here's my big theory on it all. I think in reality, I don't know any single way you could realize the telepath war in which we win it. I don't know how, and also how to realize it back then to make it not look corny, because a lot of the telepath stuff is
really hard.
Squinting eyes.
It would do.
And Byron stuff.
Yeah.
But here's what the easier thing to do is, let's write a story about an evil alien race that we know doing nefarious things. Now, this is where I lose it with A Call to Arms and with Crusade especially. I love the Druk. I think they're one of the greatest antagonists in the show.
They're great.
What I don't love is the Druk are completely changed up for this and Crusade because you need a big bad. Everything they do in this movie, every single thing they do in this movie is against how they operate in the 5th season, against they're a race that will wait 17 years to enact their revenge against Jess Sheridan alone. But in this, they're happy to declare that their presence in the galaxy fucking shit up and that you need to watch out for us. But the whole entire thing of season 4 and season 5 is they learn their lesson to move slowly, quietly, and not to take the claim, to in fact rule from behind the scenes.
Well,
and in this,
if Sheridan hadn't gotten involved, how much would people know? Because people don't recognize their ships. They would have just destroyed Earth and destroyed Mars probably next, right?
But the whole entire point was,
it's just like, well, who would have known?
But that's.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. No one would have known that Druk was responsible for this. So it would have been they've taken out Centauri Prime for revenge. Got a big blow to the Alliance season 5. I think that's great the way it happens.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Then they've got the long game with Sheridan and his son. Then they take out Earth. Apparently, the plan, according to the canon, where it's part of the lost part of the script that was cut or something. Apparently, the Dark Plague was planned for Mimbar, so it would have been take out Earth with the Shadow Death Killer, take out Mimbar with the Plague, and these disasters would have happened, and no one would have known what it was about.
It would have been more like the planet that they discover.
What's interesting,
like if they just stumbled upon that and they didn't know the bigger plot.
I think it's a bit difficult to say that too, because in this movie, Sheridan, when he realizes what's going on, he puts it forth as they are going to do this on the anniversary to make a point. Like they are showing their hand and their agenda.
Oh,
they
I think
wouldn't
they're
do that.
showing that there's a force still there.
But why would
the
they
shadows aren't fully gone? That was the impression that I got.
But why would they even wait for like the 5th anniversary and all of this kind of shit if they don't have a big game to play where they're like, we're out in the open and like they're using their ships? But also this is a thing too that really drives me up the wall about this. The movie even suggests it, but doesn't follow through on it, which is the Keepers. That's their weapon of choice. That's their thing of choice. That's what makes them so great. But
I like that the doofus doesn't even need a keeper.
That's the thing, though. Like, why do these guys have to even worry about people finding out their stuff when you saw what they did on Centauri Prime? Take over a few key people, let them help you destroy the planet that you have revenge against. But in this one, they're like, we'll just take over some dipshit Mars guy. And they don't even take him over. They just convince him. They convince him to do stuff. Well, in season 4, they're willing to even take over members of the Mars Resistance to fuck them around too. It's like, they're so shady, so like 4D chess in the show. And here's the reality of it. JMS told the story. He told the story in season 5, and now he has these movies. What do I play with? Oh, the Druk are menacing, but this
they'll make a good big bad for the show. So we'll elevate them, and now they have to be, as dangerous as the shadows
with their spaceships that you shoot at. I find that it takes the mystique out of the Druk to have them be people that Sheridan and the gang have to actively fight against. I liked it when they were a force that won, and most people didn't even know that they won.
How much time do they have? This looks like it's the only bright spot in this. Apparently, the Drock didn't have time to finish adjusting it to our biology, or they just didn't know how. But either way, it's going to take time for the plague to adjust to a new host. Now, they're saying 5 years. Could be less, and some people will be affected by it sooner than others. But probably 5 years is the best guess for now.
Their plan to use a planet killer device from the shadows is thwarted by a wonderful crew of characters, new and old, and they release a plague because the Drock, they always have more than one plan up their sleeve. They are followed through on that at least, and we, over the course of this, got to know a few people. We got Darina here, we got Galen, we also got Rachel, we got Tony Todd himself as, was it Captain Anderson as this character that was also brought in as one of the people who can help save the day.
He was adorable.
He was adorable. And what did you think of these characters that were new to this story? Ones that would have the potential to go on for more adventures and the ones that are only here?
Yeah, like I will say that it doesn't feel like there's a chasm between the quality, level of quality with those two sets of characters. It doesn't feel like Sheridan and Garibaldi are completely lived in, great performances, and then the rest of the people are trash.
Or they're still finding their feet.
Or just like, yeah, whatever, I'm rocking up doing a job. Which, by all accounts, is kind of what Jerry Doyle was probably like behind the scenes. Am I right, Baz?
He seemed very professional when he did the show.
I think he mostly was. I know he was battled with alcoholism, which eventually led to his death. That scene of Sleeping in the Light, you know, when he picks up the glass at the end.
It's a fuck you.
That's a fuck you.
Yes. That's a fuck you. And him having a goatee feels like a
shame,
fuck you too. In this, his weak goatee. Oh man.
Yeah, but no, I think he was professional and he loved the show.
Oh yeah,
and, you know, was.
But you hit it, Rachel. The newcomers, they feel like they have been in like whatever the show they're in for a while. They feel like people.
They feel like characters.
They
do. That's a really hard thing to do in a pilot.
I mean, Peter Woodward, he has to play what could easily be the worst thing ever. Like, you can make this
it could
flop. This could be embarrassing, but he is committed to it 110%. I laughed with joy when he said in a big Shakespearean tone of voice, "Remember," and I just cheered. I'm like, "Yay! This is why you get Brits in this. Woo! Like, this is why you get this is why you get Woodward in here." And you can't, like, if you ever watch Crusade, Rachel, they do get his dad. They do get Edward Woodward to do as also a technomage weirdo. But I cheered, and then the actress who played Darina, she has had some experience within the B5 world technically because she did Hypernauts. I don't know how familiar you are with Hypernauts, Baz. I'm
aware
B5.
of it.
Well, she was one of the main cast members of Hypernauts, where she was also in full alien makeup there, and she brings that kind of sassiness from that into this, but with a far more adult edge to it all, of course. And I thought she again brought the energy. Darina isn't my favorite character in this. I wish she actually served more to the story. Hence.
She feels like she's here because she's going to be here later.
And it's truly tragic that the one character that actually was new and contributed to the plot was only done so because they were going to sacrifice themselves at the end, and we need that emotional poignancy. That Tony Todd's character is the one that we got to know the most. Not only just, we're told and shown he has a family, but he interacts with the cast like just so beautifully, and I thought
the backstory works really well with it. Like, he regrets not joining up with John in the Civil War.
Yeah,
it's all of these little bits as well as the performance that just really elevates it.
And don't worry, listeners, we will get to the spotlight and talk about Tony Todd in even more depth. But here's something that I am just dying to know from you, Rachel. They sell the premise of Crusade, by saying Earth has been hit with a plague that will kill people in roughly 5 years. We're going to have to get a crew together to fly around and find a cure.
I don't care.
Wow.
I don't care because I don't believe that they would actually destroy Earth, for one.
They tried in this.
They tried, they failed, move on. I know that everything is relatively fine back on Earth.
You never even get a sense of chaos of what it was like for Earth. It's just like Earth.
You don't
is
get
just
any
in the
reactions
You don't get
from
any...
people on Earth.
They start out with an
you
ISN
don't,
report. Why didn't they bring it back?
You don't feel the weight. It's not ISNJ, and so I don't mind that she didn't come back.
But as a voice of like...
As a voice, it would have been very practical.
You started with Earth is calm, collected, and then you ended with, hello, it's me, ISN, and here's the mania that has now unfolded.
I'm also just like, wait... I thought the whole thing was they either found found most of the first ones that they could find to talk to about helping out with the shadows, and then they fucked off beyond the rim.
But they're just
so
other
it's just
ones.
Like, how many times are there going to be more first ones? Because the whole thing is it's the dawn of the third age, and all of those first ones are gone. But not these ones.
Rachel?
Not these ones, so that we can pull out a plot each week.
Rachel, I'm just going to say this for you. Hold on to this for the next episode discussion. You're going to get really upset about who the villains are in Legend of the Rangers. Let me just tell you about that for just a moment. Where that's the trick, though. Oh, there's just more first ones. There's just more ancient aliens. It's just more.
There's always more.
We thought.
You don't know the galaxy like you thought you did.
Here's what boggles my mind. It always has. It's not even the fact that we know that Earth is going to be fine. That's always a given in these shows. It's always given, even if they didn't show us time jumps in the future. What really just does not thrill me at all as a viewer is, 5 years and the plague will get Earth. I don't really feel that sense of dread ticking in. It's like, 5 years.
5 years and everybody's going to be dead, but like
some people
that's
get it
quicker. That's going to be 100%.
Yeah.
But how long until the plague starts affecting people, affecting nations?
As a springboard for a series, the idea
Give me
of
the timeline.
A weirdly made virus that will kill people in a pretty long period of time, like 5 years, does not thrill me as much as here is a space station filled with warring factions, and we are here to try and keep the peace against odds that are so insurmountable that it may be hopeless, but we're here to try.
It was a dream given form.
It's a dream given form, yes. While Crusade is, hey, we're trying to find a virus, and Baz has said it, that wasn't always going to be the premise of the show.
No, they were going to resolve it
in
season 2. They're going to wrap it up.
But Baz, what do you think? Like, when you watched it back in the day, and let alone reflecting upon it now, does the sell, like, does the pitch of Crusade ring for you? Do you find that it is compelling, that it is interesting?
Were you cold to arms?
Were you cold to arms?
I kind of was at the time. I mean, maybe because I was at, 99, 2000, so I was about 18, 19 at the time, so maybe a bit the joys of youth. I think it's a good starting point for a premise. And I think that what we've talked about, the idea of using, what happens when you leave Vorl and show technology behind and you use that, and what happens to that, and do you become those people, those races, is much more interesting. I think that knowing that's where it was going to go, that's what makes me frustrated about Crusade the most. The idea of going around trying to find a cure to the plague is a little bit... It's fine. I think on reflection now, having seen this a few times, having watched Crusade probably about 3 times in my life, it's a fine premise. It gives you a starting point to go and start telling the stories, but of course it's not the actual... The beauty is that it's not actually the story that he was trying to tell, but we never got that. So I like the premise. I think it's an effective cliffhanger, but I do agree I would like to have seen what happens next. And I think actually there's a really interesting story of people on Earth, and that kind of like, what happens when that first person falls sick? What happens when you get to year 2 and you're going, they haven't found a cure yet, and people are starting to feel maybe feeling ill and they haven't died yet, but who's going to die? Who's infected first? What they do, it does kind of old things around race and gender and equality and society and class come in. And, I'm thinking like to, I don't know if you've ever seen Talk to Children of Earth.
Seeking somebody to blame.
Yeah. Seeking someone to blame and the kind of paranoia and actually who dies first? Do they kind of quarantine people of lower classes together? That kind of thing. What happens with that? That's an interesting story that we never saw all. And I don't know if Crusade would have ever told that story.
Because Crusade had to be a ship show flying elsewhere.
On Earth.
And the most you get is characters will tell you. And that's why I get really bothered with even in just Occult Arms, isolated alone, you never get the feeling of how big of a thing this is. You just have Sheridan at the end talking about it. And we have said this on our podcast. There are many times where JMS will have to bend over backwards to explain the technicals of things so that the people on the Usenets don't yell at him so much. So it's like, at the end, it's like, here's Sheridan telling us they dropped a plague, but it's not just any sort of plague, you see. It's actually like this, and there's a timer, and they didn't... And I'm just like, what? I just keep scratching my head. What is this kind of, like, it's just one of those things that's like, okay, we have to overcomplicate it because nerddom shit. But I agree with you. There is interesting roads to walk down with that idea, especially with the movie says it as well. Sheridan, the last time he brought a fleet to Earth, brought up a lot of troubles, and now here he is bringing a fleet to Earth again, and look what happened to Earth. Now, is it fair of the people to blame Sheridan? No, it wouldn't be, but it would be honest of them to do so.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be, and to further make them xenophobic and afraid of aliens, because aliens literally poisoned our well.
Exactly. Sheridan went off and fought a fight with aliens that was nothing to do with us, somewhere else in the galaxy, and they want revenge and attacked Earth that we weren't in a war that we, in inverted commas, weren't part of. That's how it gets framed.
War, yeah. They keep talking about like whatever that kooky war is, that thing that happened over yonder.
We are all here, as you requested, but so far we have seen nothing.
General?
Certainly, on behalf of the Russian consortium, which has lost many of our citizens in recent conflicts, it is our hope that this exercise
This is no exercise.
I'm switching the light on. It's the spotlight. We talk about an actor or actress that appeared in the given thing, in this case, a movie, Occult Arms, and we go over their performance, their career, any interesting pieces of trivia, and it has to be Tony Todd. It would be a fucking disgrace if we did not pick Tony Todd. Now, I was interested in the guy who played Drake because he gave such a Babylon 5 performance. I don't know if you agree with that, Baz, but there's certain theatrics that the supporting and guest cast actors of B5 are often required to bring to a role. And just briefly, that Drake guy, didn't he just ooze, oh yeah, this is a B5 actor guy?
Him and the guy with the sunglasses, the Thieves Guild, both of them were very Babylon 5-y.
Okay. I didn't actually get to say this. So, sunglasses guy annoyed me because I was like, is he in charge or is he a figurehead? Because he only says something after the woman whispers in his ear.
Oh, I think it's because he's a ladies' man. I think it was played up like, isn't he sexy? Because he also rubbed that lady's face sexily. There was a point where I was wondering, is this guy supposed to just be wearing sunglasses because he's cool or because he's blind? Because he never kept eye level with Darina. But then he did have visual awareness when he was interacting with his lady. So I'm like, oh, okay, he's just being too cool for school. But
that doesn't actually rule it out.
It's true, but we are talking about Tony Todd, the man, the myth, the legend himself, and I love Tony Todd in general. He's always class. You know he's always going to bring...
Over 300 credits on IMDb.
Tony Todd is... I know that he does a lot of TV and a lot of film, but I'll just say it.
He also does theatre.
And theatre, of course. But when the camera showed him in this movie, I said to myself, now it's a movie. Like now it's like this could, because Tony Todd just has such a presence that goes beyond just the confines of television. And that's why when he's in Star Trek or when he's in this and this and this or X-Files, it's almost like a level of prestige follows him, even though for many people out there, they may not even know his name. People out there may not even know roles he's done.
A commanding presence.
He's such a commanding presence. It's not just the height, it's the voice, it's the face, it's those eyes, it's everything about him.
He seems to capture everybody in the room.
He captures everything that needs to be done. And I thought he was so wonderful in this because...
They're not a show stealer.
Not a show stealer, but a supporting player. No. But what I just want to say majorly in praise of Tony here is I often see him play stoic characters, villainous characters, horror characters, on the occasion heroes too, but this was probably one of the most warm characters I've seen him play. Like him being a family man and having this pathos and having this honorable thing about him. I was just so taken with him. I'm like, he could be the captain of the Excalibur if they really wanted to. Like, I love Gary Cole. Gary Cole's one of my faves, but man, if Tony Todd was open and free to do it, I would have watched Tony take over the ship. He just had such a thing, and I like him having the whole I'm a dad thing, but like that's one of the reasons why his episode in one of his episodes in Deep Space Nine, the one where he plays the older version of Jake Sisko, hits so hard because Tony Todd is really great at pulling on your heartstrings in that way, and we only get a flicker of it here in comparison to the Deep Space Nine episode.
In the Pale Moonlight?
No, that's the Visitor, I'm pretty sure. Which got beaten.
It's a Visitor, yeah.
Which got beaten by The Coming of Shadows for the Hugo Award. But now, Baz, when we said we do the spotlight, and I said we're going to be doing Tony Todd, did you have excitement for that? Are you familiar with Tony Todd's work? And what did you think of him in A Call to Arms?
Oh, I'm a huge Tony Todd fan. I mean, from Candyman to Star Trek to we watched the X-Files. I mean, you're right. He's a kind of prestige actor, and he always elevates anything he's in. And I think, as much as I say I like Galen and Dorino, he's a kind of that bit of class act brought in along with the kind of the continuing B5 cast. And I agree with you that he quite often plays he plays a Herodian, or he plays Kern, Worf's brother. Or he's a bad guy, I think, dealing with Vietnam in the X-Files. Or he's Candyman. You know, he plays his quite big, menacing character. I'm pretty certain he voiced Zoom in the Flash TV series as well.
Yes,
that voice is just immense.
If not villainous, just tragic figures too.
Yes, absolutely. And so I really appreciate, and I kind of forgotten because I haven't watched Call to Arms for a few years now. I don't always watch the TV movies when I do a rewatch of B5. So, I mean, quite a while, and I knew he was in it, but I kind of forgotten how good a character he was in this, and the fact that he's got that kind of pathos and the depth to him, but he's also that warmth that comes with him. Those scenes with his wife and his family could be incredibly trite and naff. With a lesser actor, it could be cheesy. Oh, look, he's got a wife and family, and therefore something bad's going to happen to him or them or both. And kind of they're both, because they are actually more on Earth when the plague gets hit, so they might die. And there's a element there as well. I mean, that again, if he'd been the captain in Crusade, having a wife and child on Earth that he couldn't see, who was dying of the plague, now that's the motivation as well. So it's almost a shame that he wasn't a captain. Though, like you, Ryan, I love Gary Cole, so I'm kind of glad he was a captain too. But yeah, he brings such warmth and pathos to the character, and he plays off Bruce Boxleitner brilliantly, and you are with him. And I think the little moments like I should have signed up in the Civil War and I didn't, and I think that adds a bit of kind of depth connection to B5 itself, rather than just being... He's not a character that exists in Call to Arms, he's a character that exists in the Babylon 5 universe. And I think that works really, really well.
Yeah, that was so beautifully put. He's not just a character in this movie. He is a character in this universe. You really feel that. And when we do the spotlight, those are not just the best character ones, but the actors that help flesh that out in the characters. There are those who will only appear once or a handful of times, but they leave such a long-lasting mark. And it's whatever the writing gives them, but also those actors, because when you do look at the script for this character, it's nothing groundbreaking. It's nothing unusual. It could be very much considered cliched or trite. It's very much painted on the wall what's going to happen to him. And yet you don't think it or you don't want it because Tony is just so goddamn charismatic.
The writing's on the wall, but you don't want to look at it.
I loved when he talked to Sheridan the first time and he's like, hey, so I expect you've been looking for me as like dreams and all that. And he just, chills went down my spine at that moment. Like, the script is wanting that, and it delivered, but not because of its writing, but because of Tony here.
Yeah.
But Rachel, what did you think of this performance, and are you that familiar with him?
And like, he was a guy that like I was like, I've seen your face in so many things. I don't even remember you in everything that I've seen you in. But in addition to ones that have already been mentioned, he had a recurring role in Chuck.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
You're a big Chuck fan.
He was great in that. He was great.
Mm.
He just, CIA director, just fed up with this shit.
Oh, was he the boss? Was he?
Yeah, he was like
oh,
one
that's
of the bosses.
interesting. Because you're a Chuck head. I've never really gotten into Chuck, but they do keep getting B5 people in there, right?
Yeah. Like I think it's just like rotating roster of people.
Yeah, box art is on Chuck. Yeah.
Yeah, people within the genre. I would be remiss not to go into some of the Star Trek stuff. He's had his fair share of appearing as a myriad of people, but I think the two most beloved is, of course, his role as the older version of Jake Sisko. And no offense to the actor who played the regular Jake Sisko, but that character was never as compelling or as interesting as he was when he was grown up, played by Tony Todd.
Yeah, agreed.
that episode is deserved of praise. That episode is deserved of being one of the greatest Deep Space Nine episodes. It utilizes the whole entire thing of Sisko being a dad. And I my heart breaks every time watching it, and it's because of Tony Todd coming in. But honestly, my favorite Tony Todd performance in Star Trek is Kurn. I love Kurn. He's one of my favorite minor characters. I love how he plays what is a character that is both petulant and honorable. Because Kurn is this one, like, he is what Worf wishes he could be, but he's also a little bit of an arrogant guy because he wants to do more, but he's always told no. And I just kind of love how Tony Todd plays that stoic Klingon way, but with a certain flavor that you didn't always get to see from others. And he made you believe he was brother of Worf, even though they didn't know each other really. And I always say this, but one of the reasons I hold back my absolute love of Deep Space Nine is I fucking detest the way that they wrap up Kurn. Hate it. Don't like it. Get rid of it. Erase it. One of my least favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine. I fucking hate it. It's too... Let's just erase his memory. Fuck you. They do him dirty. They just don't want him in the Klingon plot anymore because... if he's there, Worf wouldn't have anything to do because he's not as suitable as Kurn would have been. But fuck Kurn. I'm like, fuck you. I like Kurn. So I'm a bit disappointed in that. Now, Baz, you're a Star Trek fan. You're a fan of that stuff. Do you have any opinions on this guy here, Tony, when it comes to that franchise?
I mean, yeah, they're all great performances. So yeah, Kern's a great character. I'm huge Deep Space Nine fan, and characters like Martok. Martok's probably my favourite Klingon character, but Kurn is great, and I think he's it's an interesting dynamic in TNG. I think he does get done the dirty in DS9. I would have liked to have seen, because there's a lot of really great Klingon stuff in Deep Space Nine, and it's almost a shame that Kurn wasn't part of that. But I think he's really great as Kurn. I think you agree. His older Jake Sisko is a revelation. The Visitor is an amazing episode, but of course, to lose out to Common Shadow as well. Common Shadow is also an amazing episode of television. So, two greats up for nomination at the same time. So it's almost a shame because The Visitor is so good. And actually, I also really like his Hirogen as well. He's the first Hirogen that turns up in Voyager. And I'm not a huge Voyager fan, but they do really good blockbustery moments. And the Hirogen were a great race. And I think when he comes in, that first time he turns up, and he's just this powerful force of nature, and with that booming voice and all that armor. I think he's great in that one as well. I'd always like to have, I know, actually, I say I'd like to have seen more, but actually I get frustrated that Voyager had recurring characters because they should be traveling through space, not seeing the same people. But I think he was great in that as well. So I think all his Star Trek appearances were really, really effective.
For you and for the boy that I was. He needs you more than you know. Don't you see? We're going to get a second chance.
Candyman is the role he's best known for, I would say.
Yes,
and
love it.
It is... The film itself, I find to be pretty good. It's not excellent, but I find it to be pretty good. But Tony Todd, Jesus Christ, it's just, he barely even needs to speak to leave so much haunting imagery in your mind and just to really grab at you. And him being in all the sequels is what makes those sequels at all worth investing in. And even the newest Candyman had to figure out a way to bring him in some fashion because he's the glue that holds it all together. Just his look, just his voice, just he as an actor, as you even see in this Babylon 5 thing, when you hand him truly out of left field material, he'll bring this almost ethereal quality to it that gives it class, that gives it something so much more than you would ever expect. He is an actor that he always elevates the material. And
how would
Candyman's a
you
great
feel
one.
to know that in an audio drama, he played Dracula?
Of course he did. Of course he did. And I know he was in a production of 12 Angry Men as the snob juror, which I would fucking love to have seen him as the guy who doesn't sweat.
Yeah, he does. He does theatre work as well and has continued to throughout his career.
With you, Rachel, are there any other highlights for you with Tony Todd? Because this is a man who, as you said, has done it all. Like, he has been
I just got lost
everywhere.
in his IMDb and I was like, I know that, I've watched that. I do like to look at their first credits a lot of the time, see where they came from. And so his first two films were released in the same year, and I have a feeling that the one that came out second was probably filmed first. I have no proof of that, though. So he was in Sleepwalk.
Okay.
And then Platoon.
Yes, Platoon.
Wow.
Yeah, big movie to come out swinging with, huh? Yeah.
And then the top 3 highest rated TV shows that he's been in, according to like IMDb, is TNG, Homicide: Life in the Streets, and I think X-Files was the next live action one. I think there was an animated one.
Because he does a lot of voice work with that voice of his, of course. He does. He is just one of those guys. Now, Baz, for you, are there any other pieces of media or work or roles that jump to mind when it comes to Tony?
I think we've covered the key ones, really. I mentioned Zoom. I think Flash is a show that can be really great and then be really dull at the same time. But Zoom was always great at character, and part of what, visually Zoom was a great villain in the Flash TV series, and he makes a fantastic entrance in that second season. What was really great was the masterstroke of getting Tony Todd to the voice of that just made him 100 times more terrifying. So I think that was really, really effectively done. I always remember his X-Files episode. I'm looking through the IMDb now, and the stuff I've seen, he's in Wishmaster. Okay, I saw that in the cinema back in '97. I've never seen it since, but. But yeah, I mean, he's been an Angel. I do vaguely remember him being an Angel, quite familiar. He's been in Smallville. He's done everything.
He has done it all.
Charmed. Now, he's done it all.
Do you know? And go on.
Yeah.
I was going to say.
Recently he's done some like the new He-Man series as well. So. Now, are we familiar with one of his big connections to someone involved in Babylon 5?
He was in Jake and the Fat Man?
He was in Jake and the Fat Man, which JMS wrote for. Now, did he write that episode at all, though?
I didn't fact check that.
Double check, Rachel, before you talk. No, a big thing.
I just said the show in general, not JMS.
A big role in his career that many people may not be familiar with, but it is an important one, which is he was in the Tom Savini version of Night of the Living Dead, which was a version of Night of the Living Dead, which people really do enjoy. I enjoyed, in fact, because he plays, obviously, our main guy in that, but the twist of it is a little bit more so. It's more action, gore heavy because it's Tom Savini who does the effects, who did the gore effects all the time for George A. Romero, but it has Patricia Tolman as the lead of it, as Barbara, as a badass Barbara who's in a tank top with a gun, with the short hair, letting Pat Tolman do her action stuff. And outside of Babylon 5, I think it's fair to say it's probably Pat Tolman's most juicy role that she's had as an actress rather than as a stunt performer. If you follow her social medias, you guys have interviewed her, haven't you?
I've interviewed Pat twice. Yeah,
I don't know if it ever came up, but it is a big role for her. Like, and it's an awesome movie too. It's actually pretty fun.
We talked more about her stunt work. To be fair, she was so for Gina Davis in the Long The Long Good Night. She also did for. I mean, check it out if you haven't done so. It's one of the very earliest episodes we released. My interview with Pat Tolman, she talks about being the stunt woman on Jurassic Park for Laura Dern and how they filmed the T-Rex chase sequence in the Jeep. And then the stuff with the raptors when they climbed up the stairs at the end as well. And she was doing all the stunt work for that. So she loved talking about Jurassic Park. She's really good.
She's been in it all as well. I mean, she was in the first Austin Powers movie.
She was, yes. Great, she gets punched, doesn't she?
Yes. She's a man, baby.
Yeah.
But do you have any other further information or facts that you want to share with us about Tony Todd, Rachel?
I do. I read some interviews that were like, were obviously with him. And I have picked out a couple of quotes that I wanted to share, mostly because I think they're really sweet. So he was talking about like how he got started in the local theatre scene in Hartford where he grew up. And he said, I knew I would be an actor or a writer for sure after going to the O'Neill and Trinity Rep and working with some inspiring teachers who taught me that it doesn't matter when you make it, it's how you make it.
That's great. And he's an actor that he has certain things that would corner him for roles, like he's 6'5". He's got this deep, resonant voice, of course. He has this face that does have this brooding menace to it. And yet, as we've seen throughout his roster of work, he does manage to venture outside of just being like the horror guy or the monster man guy who's in the prosthetics or things like that. Like many other actors of his physical stature don't often get those opportunities, especially if they are known for being like a horror icon. Like he was a horror icon. He's Candyman.
And also being a person of color.
Which does come up a lot in his work, of course, and in his life. Like a lot of the roles he plays does comment upon that. Like there's usually some commentary upon that.
One of these articles that I read was from back, I think, in 2017, where he was doing a show where I was like, oh, I wish that I could have seen that. And he was a Black Panther that had gone to jail and had just gotten out and was trying to reconnect with his daughter.
Well, that's interesting.
And I was like, yeah, I want to see that.
So what other quotes have you got for us?
The second one that I have is, but you have to be told you're special first before you believe it yourself. I was told I was special by my aunt. The second person was my scoutmaster. So he was a big scout.
I would love to have seen Tony Todd in the full scout outfit with a woggle and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the third one kind of relates to the fact that like this was a later interview, I think 2021.
Okay.
And he said that he splits his time between, I think it was New York and LA. So he does theater stuff, he does film stuff, he does TV stuff, and it's
all spread across.
And he said about how he wants to, finish up. I want to finish my career between theatre and teaching and travelling. I'm not done yet, but theater's where it's at for me. It's where I feel most alive, where there's no question of Candyman. I thought that was really good because it's also like he partially got his start like in theater growing up doing it, but also like he went to college, but he actually dropped out in like his second year, but his university got him back to help run and support a theater program. I think it was specifically targeted at like creating pieces for African American actors. So it's like these mix of these three things have been throughout his whole career, and I like that he's holding on to all three of them.
That's our stuff on Tony Todd. Now, this is where things really heat up. Our rating for A Call to Arms. We've been both very positive and critical of it, and I do not know where people are going to be at with the rating of Yum being bad or Yum Yum being good. I am still struggling with this because I think it's got so much good stuff in there, but also stuff that is just not even, I wouldn't say any of this was truly bad. The music is bad. Obviously, some of the effects are bad, but the actual contents of it that matter more to me are very good, but then the stuff that isn't is just perfunctory. It's just perfunctory. It's not even bad. It's like, it's just perfunctory. So I will land on a uneasy yum yum for this.
Yum yum.
Everything you were saying, I was thinking of exactly the same thing. So there are some, I hate the music. There are some things that are okay. There are things that are great, but I think there's enough really good Babylon 5 stuff. Having the last appearance of Joey Dawes, Garibaldi, and obviously we got the last bit of Zach in the show. Lockley's great, Sharon's great, Darina, Tony Todd Anderson, Galen. There's a lot of good stuff. The ending is really good, apart from the exposition bit at the end. There's a lot of good stuff in here, so I'm going to go with that. I'm leaning into Yum Yum, but it's really just hitting Yum Yum.
Yum Yum. I'm in the exact same spot where it just tips over into a Yum Yum. Yum Yum.
I'm surprised because you, out of all of us, seemed the most against this, and you were very much like, I will forget this. I didn't give a fuck about this.
I think that it's I feel like it's one of the better TV movies for me.
I
feel like we're heading down the road of lost tales. It's just there waiting for me.
Don't forget Legend of the Rangers.
Yeah, I did forget about that.
Which is, the initials is Lord of the Rings, LOTR.
Oh, please don't tell me that that's just pure fantasy.
Do
they just... Is that, like, I know that it's about the Rangers, but is it like techno mages join the Rangers? Is that what that is?
Well, Rachel, let me just say this. We live for the one, we die for the one. Is that the thing, though? Is it hard not to kind of give this a yum yum because we are not measuring on the curve of Babylon 5, but the curve of the B5 movies?
Yes.
Because
I think it's a good thing to acknowledge. It's important to acknowledge the grading curve.
We really need to rank these when we're done, or at least get into details, because I still wrestle with, do I find any of the B5 movies to be good, or are they just good in the fact of each other? Which one's better than another one? I still
hold to the statement, at best, they're fine.
At best, they have some evocative moments. Like, in the beginning does have some hard-hitting little things, but also it'll have, it'll also just have some goofy shit. Like, to show that they're younger, they just raise their voices up a little bit. Like Bruce will be like, to make Sheridan sound young, instead of talking like this, I talk like this. It's like, shut up.
No.
Baz, it's been great to have you here, and you have...
It's been an absolute pleasure.
You have the honor now of telling us what Rachel and I will be watching and discussing next time on Babylon 5.
On an all-new Babylon 5.
Right, so here we go then. So the Rangers, an order of warrior priests, have wandered the darkness between the stars for over 1,000 years, protecting 100 worlds from invasion and destruction. But now a new alien threat appears on the event horizon of the Interstellar Alliance, a force more ancient and more powerful than anything previously encountered. The only obstacle in the way of this new race, a single broken down Ranger ship under the command of David Martel Dylan Neal, whose sole orders were to escort Ambassador Jakar Andreas Katsoulis to an interstellar conference. Alone, barely armed, they must defeat an enemy unlike anything they have ever seen before.
Whoopsie!
Okay.
Rachel, uh-oh. Some more ancient first ones you didn't hear about.
I can't wait to hear your reactions.
I was prepared for that part. It's only Jakar?
I can't say.
It's Andreas Katsoulis' last performance, so enjoy that.
Enjoy that.
Always love his performance. Always love him. Forever.
Well, you won't be disappointed with him in this. He gives you what you want.
Okay, but it sounds like... So this kind of had a foot in both places of being like linking Babylon 5 to Crusade and the elements of the pilot.
But
it doesn't sound like
Legend of the Rangers.
I don't want to say too much, but it's not necessarily set chronologically. There's a weird chronology where this fits in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Legend of the Rangers is its own unique special snowflake, and I can't wait for you to finally meet it.
I'm nervous now.
Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous.
I'm scared that it's going to be really bad.
It does have a reputation, and you are aware
I know
of
that
it. You've
doesn't
heard
have
its
the reputation.
negative reputation.
Like Lost Tales has more of a reputation.
Well, when you say that,
But,
it's
like-
me. I say bad things about Lost
but
Tales
like
more.
that description sounds like it's absolutely fucking nothing.
No, Rachel. It sounds
Like,
like
it
another
sounds-
B5 thing.
It sounds like it's just going to be full throttle, all of the tropes that a pilot can fucking throw at you.
Rachel, give it a chance. It's just a pilot for a series that never got picked up, so give it a chance.
No, like we kept on giving this one passes because it at least got one season. No,
Rachel. Let me calm you down. Let me calm you down. If I say that at least it's not Hypernauts, will that throw you?
No.
Well,
no, it fucking won't.
It does not feature the Gloose, which is loose, by the way. Can someone please capture the Gloose? But Baz, such a pleasure to have you join us here in the twilight hours of Babylon 5. It's getting to the end game now. And as we wrap this out, could you please remind everyone about your podcast, yourself, where you can be found, where your stuff is at?
Yes, so my main Babylon 5 podcast is a Dream Given Form on the We Made This network. You can find a Dream Given Form by searching that on pretty much everywhere: Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, all the various social media platforms. I think the Dream Given Form is on there. And obviously the other podcasts I do. So the TARDIS Crew, a Doctor Who podcast I co-host with my son Ben. I've also technically got a Lord of the Rings podcast, which is kind of on our hiatus until season 2 of the Rings of Power, but that's called One Rules Them All. And I'm also I'm too busy. I'm also a co-host on Make It So, a Star Trek Legacy podcast looking at the TNG era of episodes TNG, DS9, and Voyager. And I've also written a number of books as well, including I mentioned before, so I'll plug it one more time. So The Triumph of Babylon 5, the science fiction classic and its long twilight struggles, riffing on my favourite episode there, is coming out now. So I think it's coming out at the beginning of February in the Australia, at some point in February in UK. It's out next week. We're recording it's the end of January in the US. It's available on Kindle now as well, because if you want to come, that's come from McFarlane Publishing. And I said that looks at the kind of history and legacy and development of the show. So I go through Crusade and Rangers and all the things that never happened, the many movies that JMS planned, all the way from the conception of Babylon 5 all the way through to the announcement of The Road Home. So it's basically covering the 30-year history of the show. It's got me interviews with Pat Tallman and Marshall Teague from the podcast, and an exclusive 2-chapter interview with Peter Jerusik, who played Londa as well. So please check that out.
Have you ever had to chat to JMS himself?
No, JMS is a bit prickly. I actually technically, I did tell his Patreon for a while. I did, because I know he say he won't do podcasts. and I was on his Patreon for a while, and I could have an opportunity to message him directly. I've interacted with him a couple of times on Twitter, but I know he's a bit prickly, but Pat Tallman did a kind of publicity bit on the back of the book as well, so she was lovely.
That's sweet. Pat Tallman's so great.
Yeah.
We're big fans.
She's amazing, yeah. She's been on our podcast twice. And all this stuff, you can find me. I'm either at Baz Greenland or Greenland Baz on pretty much any social media platform. I'll publicise all the stuff there.
And those links will be in the description, along with
we'll include a bunch of
socials,
stuff.
which are YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. If you want to email us, you should send that over to yumyumpod@gmail.com. And speaking of Patreon,
we have a Patreon in case you didn't know. We do have a Patreon that you can support the podcast financially, and in return, you get to be a part of a wonderful group Discord, a community of Yumlings. We are talking about so many things over there. Of course, Babylon 5, Star Trek, Doctor Who stuff, all of the Expanse. And with the Expanse, we have a podcast where we're going through the Expanse for the first time, which you can hear on this main feed. But if you want to get the episodes early and skip ahead, and you don't have to wait as long, you can support the Patreon, go to the tier that gets you the Expanse episodes, and join in on the fun and listen to Rachel and I just completely bluster our way through and try and figure out things of the Expanse and appreciate what we've been given and have a little bit of fun. Make a little bit of fun of loser characters like Havelock, everyone's favorite. Don't worry, we're
Ryan
3 seasons in and we're still making fun of Havelock. Oh yes, and Rachel being infatuated with the beefiest beefcake in the show, Amos. And we're having a grand old time. So come support the podcast over there. And if not, if you don't have the means to do that, it would be wonderful if you shared our show about the place and rated and reviewed it. But until next time, everyone, please remember the one thing that JMS did not carry on from The Gathering. Now, Baz, The Gathering has 2 different cuts. Some of the stuff from the cuts don't carry over, of course. There's things that don't even get mentioned again, like Takashima never gets referenced again in any Babylon 5. Dr. Carl gets mentioned. Lita comes back. The stuff does have canon to it, but you know what really upsets us that didn't come back? Jakar's farewell. Do you remember his farewell in The Gathering? His way of saying goodbye? Do you remember?
Oh, it's been about a year or so since I've watched it. Remind me.
It's him thumping his chest and saying, "Good eating to you." That's how the nuns used to say goodbye. And then it never was in the show.
Nope.
Never again. Like Delen's power rings.
Oh, yes, Delen's power rings.
Left behind.
That's why JMS needs to reboot it, so that way he can bring back all of these wonderful things and do it proper this time.
And Nagrath.
And Nagrath, of course. We need a big bug guy. We need the thump on the chest. But until next time, Baz, good eating to you.
Good eating to you.
Good eating to you.